Hi there, my name is Toby and today I'm continuing with my Aether Physics series, and today is getting quite deep. I'm talking about plasmoids. Now some of you may have heard of this. It's a new thing, recent discovery. Everyone knows plasma, but plasmoid is something else. Plasmoid is a microscopic plasma. So I'm going to explain this in detail and how this works with Aether Physics. Now you've got to understand Aether Physics. It's again a very different approach. It's all about the point of inertia, the 0 point. And if you can understand this, you can understand the basic principles of Aether Physics, how it works. You see, everything is light. Light is electromagnetism. Everything is light. But where does light come from? Light comes from the ether. The ether is the unified field, metaphysics, the field of infinite probabilities, infinite potentiality. From this field there's a disturbance, and that disturbance creates electromagnetism, light. And it creates light in all different frequencies. And super high frequency light creates particles, specifically neutrons. Neutrons are the only particle, because I'm defining a particle as a standing wave of light, a standing wave of the electromagnetic field. There's only one way of creating a true circular spherical standing wave of electromagnetism, and that becomes a neutron. And again, I've discussed this in great detail. A neutron will also decay into a proton, so they're the same particle. Everything else is just light. Now light is emitted from a point. Again, the 0 point. It always comes from a point. And light is emitted spherically. Spherically from a point. It expands from a point. The other thing to realize about light is created from the ether, and it is created in perfect balance. Light is the perfect balance between electrostatics and magnetism. These two things come together. This is what creates a dynamic. Electrostatics is like a divergence from a point. Magnetism is like a contraction to a point. But these two things come together. They always come together because the ether is rest. It is balance. From balance, a disturbance happens, and then it must go back to balance. It must go back to rest. And I've talked about this multiple times. But light is the perfect balance, the natural balance that appears, and it is governed by the golden ratio. Again, there's a lot of details to explain this properly. You can see perhaps the golden ratio. Most detail is the magnetic field of a magnet. Here's a magnet. When it comes out, there's a difference in the expansion and the contraction of the north and south pole, and you will have an egg shape when you look at this in a particular way. The egg shape is the golden ratio. So this is how it works. The golden ratio governs the creation of light, electromagnetism, out of the ether, from the ether. Or rather, it is the ether. It is a disturbance of the ether. But it comes from a point, the 0 point. That is the secret, the point of inertia. The magnetic field in this magnet comes out of a point. A black hole is a point. And all technology, all advanced technology will be ether technology. It will be to do with a point of inertia, a point of coherence. That's the other way of looking at it, a point of coherence. A laser is coherence. What is coherence? It's the same as a magnet. All the atoms in a magnet line up, create coherence, and then boom, you have one big magnetic field from one point. You create this point. This point is an effect created by geometry. The geometry alignment of the atoms creates this point of inertia. Same in a laser. The coherence comes from the atoms of a crystal. You need crystals for lasers. The coherence in the atoms means that when light passes through, or light is created in a laser, all the atoms vibrate at the same way, as if all the light comes out at the same frequency from all the atoms at the same time. When this happens in coherence, you have a multiplicative effect. And what you have, it's as if this crystal here was a laser emitting light, trillions of atoms all emitting light, each one of them emitting light from a point, an atom. But when all the atoms do it together, it's as if this crystal, due to coherence, has become one big atom emitting one frequency of light in one go. due to coherence from one point. It will be point-sourced light, just like the magnet, point-sourced energy. It's all to do with the point. Higher technology requires you to create this point source. And there's ways of creating it. One of the ways you can create this is implosion. So you need implosion technology, not explosion technology. What we've got is explosive technology, which still comes from a point, exploding out of a point. But what we want is technology that comes from implosion going into a point, far more powerful. This is the difference between fission and fusion. So how do we do this? How do we create this? Well, plasmoids essentially come from this implosion technology. Now, let's just break it down. What is a plasma? Well, we've got the three states of matter, solid, liquid and gas. We all know what those are. Solid, it's all the atoms are locked in place. Liquid, the atoms can move about a bit. Gas, they're more spread out and they can move out a bit more. Plasma, now is another level above gas. That's where the atoms and the electrons have separated to some degree. There are different levels of separation. In other words, the atoms are returning back towards their subatomic state. They're in the process of going back. You see, an atom is now trapped energy. An atom, you can think of an atom as light stuck in a circle, spinning around. It can't do anything. It's stuck there. But it wants to go back to the earth, to ether. It wants to disappear again. The only way an atom or a neutron can disappear is if it is smashed, collided. That wave is broken, then it will become pure fluid energy again. It's always pure fluid energy. But once this standing wave is broken, it will now dissipate back to the ether, return back to balance, to inertia. The trapped energy in an atom can escape and return back. So the only way you can do that is high energy to break the wave. So a plasma is, again, you're taking matter into a higher and higher energy state. So you've got low energy plasmas like we've got in these tube lights. So a certain amount of the atoms, the energy in an atom has been separated, the electrons have separated, and you've got ionization. So electricity can now pass through. Again, it's a sort of coherence. The whole thing becomes a fluid, a flux, with interactions going on. And in this fluid, this flux of electromagnetism and atoms in a higher energy state allows electricity to pass through it. That's what lightning is. Lightning is so much energy building up that it ionizes the gas, the air, and creates a plasma such that electricity can pass through it. Now, you could go even higher. What we were looking for now is a super high energy plasma. Super high energy plasma, that's what they're trying to create, is a fusion reactor, which is a plasma. So if you can get a super high energy plasma, now what you're doing is returning the atoms back closer and closer to their subatomic state. So you're breaking up the atom more and more and more, trying to get back to neutrons and protons, going all the way back. And if you can go all the way back to neutrons and protons, well, now you can reformulate matter in a different way. You can reformulate it. This is the transmutation of matter. Now again, we haven't even got quite to the stage where we can create a plasma to create energy, because it's very difficult to do, but they're trying to do that, a fusion generator based on plasma. But there is a way. There is a way recently discovered, but this again is old technology. And it's also biological technology. It is the technology of the plasmoid. You see, to create a plasma such that we're returning the atoms back closer to their original state, which requires high energy, and again, matter, neutrons are created out of black holes. Super high energy light is neutrons. They're super high energy. As the energy cools down, then they stick together and create atoms, substances. So a plasma will slowly cool down and create substances. But if you can create this super high energy plasma where you've basically just got neutrons, now when that cools down, you're going to have the formation of all substances. That's the process of the universe creating itself out of black holes. Neutrons are created, then all substances appear from that somehow. Pretty much just randomly, protons and neutrons, electrons will get together, create substances. But if you could create this, essentially you'd be able to transmute matter, change one element into another element, but of course it requires super high energy plasma. which we don't know how to do because we're still thinking big. But with implosion technology, you can create super high energy because you're going in towards a point. Now think about it. The way you go, when you implode to a point, you are increasing pressure. So one of the ways you can increase energy, again, if you look at my lecture on kinetics, again, Aether Physics, kinetics and friction, I'm explaining how kinetics is still just field interactions. Everything is electromagnetism. Every single physical phenomena can be explained in terms of electromagnetism. So when you create pressure, high pressure, the fields are compacting, you're creating a very intense field interaction, increasing the energy, such that the atoms could return back to their subatomic state. But how do you create that pressure? It's so difficult. Well, that can be done through geometry, and it can be done on a microscopic scale. If you're only looking at creating a tiny microscopic bubble of pressure, well, it doesn't need so much energy. There's a technology going on right now. It's called the thunderstorm generator. I'll leave links below to the videos talking about it. And that's basically done through geometry, two spheres. They're passing gas through these two spheres, and somehow in this process the pressure increases and they have little microscopic bubbles creating plasmoids. They're calling it plasmoids, microscopic plasma. And they're noticing when they take the machine apart, inside the little plasmoids they have had transmutation of matter. Different elements have appeared. How did they get these different elements? Titanium, silver, gold, all sorts of stuff, little microscopic amounts, tiny amounts. But nevertheless, it means they have achieved a high level plasma, super high power plasma, where the actual atoms have gone back to their subatomic state and could reform into different elements. And that is implosion technology, imploding down to a point and then re-emerging from a point. This is Aether Physics. Now, because this is low energy, this can also happen biologically. And I'm going to do a second talk about this in more detail about the biological processes of transmutation of matter. But that goes together with the esoteric practices, the chakra meditations, the glandular systems, elevating your energy. See, the glands, the hormones are mysterious fluids. And the ancient practices believed these fluids will transform into each other, and you lift up the fluids up to the pineal gland, and then you go back to energy, back to spirit. Transmutation of matter. And again, we can't imagine how that would happen because we can't turn into a plasma, but in the body you could have microscopic plasmoids. It doesn't require that much energy, it requires geometry. You see, this is again Aether Physics. It's the technology of geometry all by itself. Geometry has got a power. We just can't see what that power is. It's only when we put geometry together with electricity and magnetism and geometry, then we see some technology. But geometry all by itself, no electricity, no magnetism, we think, nothing. But geometry is the precursor to electricity and magnetism. Geometry is the ether. So geometry is still got the power of the ether. It's a thing in its own right. Very hard for us to get the head around this. And plasmoids is an example where geometry is creating high pressure, real physics, just all by itself. No input of energy, just passing through a geometrical structure. Just the right, it's got to be the right sort of geometry. That's where all these ancient technologies are so clever. It's based on geometry, very simple. We think, it's primitive. It's not primitive. Very advanced geometries. It can be quite simple. But simple done in a way of creating implosion, creating coherence, creating point source energy. It can be done simply. So these plasmoids, again, microscopic pressure, what you can do, again, now you're not creating matter, you are transforming one substance into another substance. You need existing matter. Atoms have got to be there. You compress atoms in such a point that they ionize, they become a plasma. Then you've got to keep compressing them such that they become a super high energy plasma, return back to their subatomic state, neutrons and protons. And then when they burst, reassemble, they cool down, different substances are created. Again, it's random, they don't know which substances, but there will be another way that you could create and choose the substance you want. For example, in the body, the transmutation of the hormones is a substance, a defined substance, biological substances. So the next talk, I'm going to go into detail about biological transmutation. But first of all, in this lecture, I wanted to say plasmoid is a real thing. People are looking at it. Real scientists are looking at it. And if we can look at this further, this is also the secret to free energy. It's another secret. Remember, there's a whole lot of stuff going on about cold fusion. Cold fusion, when I was studying physics, that just started. And all my professors were dismissing cold fusion. It was happening in Japan. No, it can't be right. But the studies on cold fusion never stopped. It was dismissed back then. It never stopped. It never stopped the studies on it. They still carried on in secret. People now are still studying cold fusion. Cold fusion is perfectly possible if you can understand plasmoids. Plasmoids. Microscopic plasma. Using geometry to increase pressure in a little bubble of gas such that you create a super high energy plasma on a microscopic scale. Little bubble. That's implosion technology. And that is what ether physics is all about. The point of inertia, the 0 point. This is an abstract thing. You know, the 0 point is moving. We don't even know where it is. It's the same as the center of gravity. That's an abstract point. I've got in my body a center of gravity. Right now it's fixed. I move my hand here, my center of gravity is moved. That is still a point of inertia. It's an abstract philosophical point. But it is real physics. It is really the center of gravity. Gravity is a force. Now, I've talked about this multiple times. Gravity is the same as magnetism. Just for sake, it's a force that pulls to a point. Which is the point that that force pulls to? Well, that point will move depending on everything that's happening around that point. So technology is the ability to create a point of inertia, a 0 point, and compress energy into it. Implode towards it. And if you look at Victor Schauberger, he does a lot of this stuff as well. Implosion technology with fluid, water, through geometry, organic geometries and movements of water through organic geometries, spiraling inwards. Spiraling inwards means exponential increase in velocity and power, increase in pressure towards a point. You can create a massive implosion into a point just with water and geometry. And you start off quite slow, just water coming in. This stuff can be done. It's not difficult. This is the secret to free energy. All of it is the secret to free energy. Ether physics is all about the point of inertia, the 0 point. You've got to create one in such a way that energy comes out. And then you've got free energy. But you have to open your mind to the possibility that this can happen. And the only way you can imagine that is because you have to believe in the ether. The ether is metaphysics, potential energy, pure possibilities. You have to create a point from which potential energy manifests into real energy, i.e. light, electromagnetism. So this is an introduction to it. The next talk will be about the biological transmutation of matter, how we can do this in our meditation, how this really happens in the body. And this is to do with the advancement of the soul, increasing the advancement of the soul, training your soul power, because your soul is also a point of inertia of the ether. We are a singularity of consciousness, a point from which consciousness is emerging. But we have to focus that point. We have to do the technology to focus that point and increase our power. Otherwise, the energy is dissipating, and we dissipate, we lose our power. It's diluted, spread out. We have to concentrate our power, implode, and become more powerful. More soul power, more awareness, more consciousness means more wisdom, more understanding, which also means more technology. So this is not only a method of creating technology, it's a method of creating wisdom so that you understand technology. It's a big deal, big deal. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this little talk on plasmoids made sense. Stay tuned for the next part, in which I'll talk about biological transmutation of matter. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in any of these other videos here.